Hello, Professor. I hope you're doing well. My name is Drael Wafula, and this is my presentation on AI governance, not only in the US, Canada, or the UK, but also in other countries like Singapore, Pakistan, India. Yeah, so we'll be looking for AI governance, its regulation, and the frameworks that they have been put in place to govern the AI, the use of AI. Okay, so an introduction. Artificial intelligence, AI, which is a no longer frontier technology, it's a present day reality reshaping governance, economics, military affairs, education, and culture. The Western world, encompassing the English speaking countries, the European Union, Singapore, Hong Kong, India, and Pakistan, is at the epicenter of both technological advancement and the debate surrounding AI responsible use. This report explores the distinct but interrelated dimensions of AI governance, regulations, and ethics. It critiques the implementation, effectiveness, and adaptability in the face of evolving risks, including deepfakes, foreign interference, and generative AI in education. So let's look for at AI governance. AI governance refers to structures, policies, and institutions that oversee development and use of AI technologies. It encompasses both formal regulation and informal norms designed to ensure accountability, transparency, and fairness. Some of the frameworks that are included, let's see some frameworks and the examples. The European Union has taken a leading role with the European Union AI Act, a risk-based legislative framework that was passed on in 2024. It classifies AI systems into unacceptable, high, limited, and minimal risk categories with corresponding obligations. In contrast, the UK, the United Kingdom, has opted for a sector-based pro-innovation strategy using regulatory bodies without comprehensive legislation. Singapore model AI governance framework emphasizes explainability, fairness, and human-centric. It's a non-binding but serves as a global reference point, especially in Asia and many Asia countries. Yeah, governance bodies and organization. The actors include we have the OECD. This is OECD. It has like 40 countries that follow the AI principle that are put in place by the OECD. We have the IEEE, which publishes AI ethics and governance standards, and we also have the World Economic Forum, which facilitates multi-stakeholder governance models. Also, we have the UN through the UNESCO released ethical guidelines for AI in 2021. So we'll see the success and failures of AI. Like for example, the EU AI Act is a landmark but has been critic for slow rollout and bureaucratic inefficiency. In contrast, the comprehensive governance in the US has led to fragmented oversight and little enforcement of AI. Toronto. Okay. Now moving to the AI regulation. Uh, AI regulation refers to binding legal rules that govern AI deployment. These include laws on data protection, transparency, discrimination, and liability. So we have some case studies from different countries. For example, here we have the UN, United States. This is during the President Biden 2023 executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI mandates. The executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI mandates federal agencies to assess AI risk, especially in national security and civil rights. However, it lacks legislative force. Okay, this is the, let's just look at it. This is the executive order by President Biden. Uh, but this order was written off by President Trump when he came into power. So it's no longer legislated, yeah. Also, going back to the next case study is India. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act that was implemented in 2023 emphasizes that data sovereignty, but does not yet addresses AI-specific risk. So let's just go to the example of the, yeah, you can see like the highlights of the bill. Let's say the bill will imply the processed digital data within India and such collected online, collected. Yeah, okay. You can see it has the penalties. Okay. Another case is Singapore. Uh, Singapore leverages strong data protection laws. They have like a policy, it's called the PDPA, and promotes industry-led AI compliance. Also, Pakistan released a national AI policy on 2022, focusing on AI for development, but regulatory mechanism remain underdeveloped. As you can see, uh, mm, through this reference, yeah, mhm, yeah. So according to this reference, you can see like the state of AI in Pakistan. Yeah. Enforcement case studies. Compass algorithm in the US used in sentencing, it was found to be racially abused. So, okay. Mhm. Okay, these are like the problems with AI. So we have like this Compass algorithm in the US, which is used in sentencing. It was found to be racially biased, sparkling public outcry and calls for algorithmic audits. Yeah, for example, we can just see this case. Uh, it was a comparison between this black man and this white man. So the machine was found to be biased. Uh, can see like if we compare somewhere here, you can see for example here, yet something odd happened when Borden and Prater were booked into jail. A computer program spat out a score predicting the likelihood of each committing a future crime. Borden, who is black, was rated a higher risk than Prater, who is white, was rated a lower risk. So you can see, like, for example, this machine that is used for predicting, like, it's used for this compass algorithm in the US, which is used for sentencing, was found to be racially biased in that it was biased against the black person compared to a white person. Also, we have a Clearview AI, which was fined by data protection authorities like in Canada, the UK, and the European Union for scrapping biometric data without the user's content, the owner's consent. Yeah, this was the case. Uh, Facial recognition lawsuit of Clearview AI. Yeah, you can see the case here on July 8th, 2020. A proposed class action was filed with the Federal Court of Canada alleging that Clearview AI collects, copies, stores, disclosures, and sells facial photos of Canadian residents without their knowledge or consent by using an algorithm to detect the unique fingerprint of an individual. The plaintiff alleges that this is a violation of privacy rights, constitutional rights, and their copyright and moral rights, as the authors and holders of these rights have not consented to their reproduction and use of by Clearview. Yeah, this was an example of an where AI just takes people people data information without their consent. So these are the some of the failures, like the failures of AI in enforcing the AI. So let's just look at the AI ethics. AI ethics refers to the moral principle and values that should guide the development, deployment, and use of artificial intelligence. It includes, it deals with questions of right and wrong, fairness, responsibility, and the potential impact of AI on individuals and society. It is the foundation upon which regulation and governance structures are often built. Key concerns, common ethical concerns include bias and discrimination baked into algorithms, lack of transparency, i.e., which is called the black box problem, potential for job displacement, privacy violation, accountability for AI actions, ensuring safety and security, and upholding human human rights and autonomy. Addressing ethics globally, we can see, like, for example, we have the European Union strongly emphasizes a human-centric approach focused on trustworthiness, fundamental rights, and democratic values. Key ethical requirements include human agency and oversight, technical robustness and safety, privacy and data governance, transparency, diversity, non-discrimination, and fairness, societal and environmental well-being, and accountability. So this is a reference to the AU addressing the AI ethics. So there we go. Yeah, yeah. You can see the AI Act, we have different rules, like uh, we have the categories of the risk that there were categories. For example, you can see you have the unacceptable risk, Some of the AI which were banned in the AU include the one for cognitive behavioral manipulation of people or specific vulnerable group. For example, voice activated toys that encourage dangerous behavior in children, social scoring AI. The third one was biometric identification and categorization of people, real-time and remote biometric identification systems. Okay. Uh, so we have here, like you see, the implementation, the parliament has set up a working group to oversee the implementation and enforcement of AI Act. Uh, want to make sure the adopted AI rules contribute to the development of the digital sector in Europe. The group cooperates with the European Commission's EU AI office, which was set up to clarify key provisions of the Act. Okay. Okay, the second one is the United States. Ethical guidelines often stem from initiatives like the White House executive orders promoting safety, security, responsible innovation, equity, civil rights, and privacy. We have also frameworks like the NIST AI risk management framework, incorporates ethical consideration, public concerns often center on privacy, job loss, and potential misuse. So, so we can just have like, for example, we can have a look at the NIST AI the NIST AI framework in the US. So so you can see this framework, the develop measurement technology tools and standards to advance reliable, safe, transparent, explainable, and privacy enhanced and fair artificial intelligence so that its full commercial and societal benefits can be realized without harm to people or planet. We can see the case study in the UK, which focuses on principles like safety, security, transparency, fairness, accountability, and the ability to contest AI decision, redress, public concern exists around job displacement and potential harm. Mm. Also, on another case of a study is Canada, which is guided by the principles aligned with the OECD. For example, we have the human rights, fairness, transparency, accountability, has specific ethical guidelines for governance, government use via directive on automated decision making, and a voluntary code for generative AI, emphasizing safety, fairness, and transparency. This is the reference to Canadian. I just say like it offers a guide to you see using generative AI in Canada. So I just say like the overview. Uh, So you can see, for example, the directive on automated decision making defines AI as information technology that perform tasks that will ordinarily require biological brain power to accomplish, such as making sense of spoken language, learning behavior, solving a problem. Generative AI is a type of AI that produces content such as text, audio, code, video, and images. Oh, that's just a lot of. Mm. So we can see here like uh, this act it says like before federal institution like this government institutions start using AI, they must assess and mitigate certain ethical, legal, and other risks. For example, these tools can generate inaccurate data, amplify biasness, and violate intellectual property, privacy, and other laws. So yeah. You can see, for example, like training data could also be outdated. Yeah, for example, ChatGPT 3.5 is trained on data up to, so it has limited ability to provide information on events for development after that. So training the data can be biased and lack a diversity of view, given that the internet is frequently the data source. This biasness can be reflected on the outputs of the tools. So this is the recommended approach. Like federal institutions should explore how they could use generative AI tools to support their operations and improve outcomes for Canadians. Given the challenges and concerns relating to these tools, institutions should assess and mitigate risk and use them only for activities where they can manage the risks effectively. With the growing adoption of these technologies in different sectors, and by the public exploration by federal institutions will help the government understand the risk and opportunities of these tools and keep pace of evolving. Yeah. Okay. Uh, Another case we can see Singapore, which emphasizes ethical AI use through its model AI governance framework, promoting internal governance checks, human well-being, and appropriate level in data accountability and privacy. And this framework is it's mostly used by the countries in Asia. They have highly adopted it's called the ISAGO framework by from Singapore. I can just say it. This is the framework from Singapore. Uh, this is the reference talking about the framework. You can see in collaboration with the World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Info Media Development and Personal Data Protection Commission have developed this implementation and self-assessment guide for organization ISAGO, a companion to complement the voluntary model AI governance framework. This guide is meant to be a living document and aims to help organizations assess the alignment of their AI governance processes with the model framework identity. Yeah. So these are just a reference to the framework. So we can just say, uh, yeah. Also we have India, the AI for all. national strategy includes principles for responsible AI, aiming for inclusive growth and ethical use. Also, we have the OECD. This is a widely adopted OECD AI principle uh, framework that provide a significant ethical baseline focused on inclusive growth, human rights, transparency, robustness, accountability. So we can just see this framework which is adopted by many countries, over 40 countries. We can just see like we have these members. You see, it's a long list of members who have just adopted this OECD framework. So mhm, yeah, so yeah, so yeah, where was yeah? I'm just looking for yeah. So we can just see like where this framework as just outlined for AI. You can select it, the AI system, the recommendations, what they're required to do, and how they will implement and enforce AI in the environment. So, where is it? Yeah, so you can see they have aspects like fairness and privacy, respect to the rule of law, human rights, democratic values, including fairness and privacy, transparency and explainability. Like you can see the AI actors, the people who are using the AI should commit to transparency and responsible disclosure regarding AI systems. To this end, they should provide meaningful information appropriate to the context and consistency with this state of act. So also it emphasizes on robustness, security, and safety, also accountability. Yeah, Daram. Okay, now we can just look at the core concerns in AI development. For example, the first concern in our case will look at defects and disinformation. Defects present critical risks for election integrity, reputational damage, and public trust. Countries like the UK and India have initiated draft laws against malicious deepfakes creation, but enforcement remains weak. Okay, this is just a reference to deepfakes in the UK. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can see like the government of the UK cracks down deepfakes creation. This was back in 16th April of 2024. Uh, See, making sexually explicit deepfake image to be a new offense. Those convicted of this immoral crime face prosecution and unlimited fine. Latest measure in huge program of work to do to be better protect women. You can say under this new offense, those who create this horrific image without consent face a criminal record and unlimited fine. If the image is shared more widely, offenders could be sent in jail. Yeah. So these are this is just like a law in the UK that states if you if you are found like violating like defects, making some like some uh, content which are not like these are not good content. Like you see, like something that these are explicit content. Uh, so you'll face fine, or maybe you can be sent into jail. So yeah, so let's see. Okay, just move this here. Also, the second concern it's in political and foreign interference. Like, for example, the 2022 US elections witnessed AI-powered bots spreading disinformation. Research from Stanford Internet Observatory indicates foreign actors use generative AI to mimic legitimate political disclosure. This is the reference. This is the reference from Stanford. Yeah. Mm. See, the EAP focused on voting-related misinformation and the delegitimization of election results. Its primary goals were number one, identify mis and disinformation before it went viral and during viral outbreaks. The two is share clear, accurate counter messaging, and three, increase transparency into dynamics shaping the information during the 2022 elections and aftermath. The third one is generative AI in education. Also, tools like ChatGPT have transformed education. However, when tools like ChatGPT have transformed education, however, research from University of Melbourne in Australia shows increased in academic dishonesty, prompting university to reevaluate assessment models. So you can just see like this research is from Melbourne University. Yeah, see ChatGPT and academic integrity, options for adapting assessment in semester 2023. You can see, yeah, okay. Copyright and IP issues. For example, I have this case between Getty Images and Stability AI in the UK. Is a landmark case where Getty Images sued for using copyrighted images in training data. The case may set global precedents. So let's just look at the case in the UK. You can see this case in the UK. It's between Getty Images. Mm. They were being sued for using images to train AI without the consent of the users. So we have another concern, which is job displacement and economic inequality. This is McKinsey Global Institute predicts that up to 800 million jobs could be displaced by 2030. This risk is higher in developing economies lacking reskilling programs, military application, autonomous drones, and AI targeting systems raise ethical and legal concerns. The UN group and governmental experts on lethal autonomous weapons systems continuous debates without binding agreement. So it's just it has been a debate that is going on, but they have not come to an agreement on AI in military applications. So the current debates that is going on, it's we can just say like the acceleration and the caution. So the pros of AI, like many people say, like for example, we can see like people like Elon who always on X and Meta and parts of Silicon Valley argues that AI as is promoting rapidly develop it drives development of economic growth. And also uh, the cautionary voices, like the people who are against the AI, they say that the Future of Life Institute advocates for moratorium on advanced AI development, citing existential risks. So also like public versus private control. Government face challenges in regulating powerful private actors like the OpenAI and Google. Regulatory captures and lobbying slow legislative process. Let's just say AI in practice in corporate governance. Internal AI ethics board, Google short-lived AI ethics board disbanded due to controversies. Microsoft, however, has implemented a responsible AI standard requiring audits and red teaming. Compliance by design. Corporations are embedding compliance at early stages of development. Examples include data minimization, bias testing, and explainability controls. Future outlook. AI regulation is at the crossroads, AI regulation is at crossroads, fragmented governance risk, a regulatory race to the bottom global coordination, possibly led to the United Nations, is vital. Key gaps include cross-border data governance, enforceability, enforceable ethical standards, AI arms race prevention. Yeah. So going to a question which was assess how the right to explanation or contestation of automated decision is implemented under the EU GDPR and whether similar protection exists in emerging in US or Canada law, include case laws or enforcement actions where available. The increasing reliance on automated decision making in sectors ranging from finance to criminal. Actually, this was the question that you sent on the Excel file, so I'm just answering it here. The reliance on automated decision making in sectors ranging from finance to criminal justice has prompted policymakers and scholars to discuss the need for transparency, accountability, and contestability in AI systems. The EU General Data Protection Regulation (GDPR) represent a pioneering effort to embed these values into law. However, questions persist regarding the clarity and enforceability of the so-called right to explanation and similar rights to contest decision. This report assesses how the GDPR approaches these issues and examines whether comparable protection are emerging in the US and Canada law, including relevant case laws and enforcement actions. So let's look at the EU, the GDPR, right to explanation and contestation. So Canada. Automated decision making and profiling. Article 22 of the GDPR provides that. So just this is the EU. So let's look, the first one we are looking at the legal framework under the GDPR. So the first key point we are looking at is the automated decision making and profiling. Article 22 of the GDPR provides that individuals have the right not to subject to decisions based solely on automated processing that produces legal or similarly significant effects. Although the regulation does not explicitly call it right to explanation, courts and scholars argue that obligations under Article 15, which is access to personal data and information about processing logic, implied that data subjects should be given meaningful insights into the decision-making process. Contestation of decisions. The GDPR implicitly supports contestation through the rights to obtain human intervention. Data subjects can request a review of decisions made by algorithms, particularly in context with potentially adverse impact. Second one is interpretive challenges and enforcement. Ambiguity in explanation. We have seen this like scholars such as the Watcher, uh, Mittelstadt, and Russell have highlighted that the GDPR language is ambiguous. While it mandates transparency, it does not set out clear requirements for a detailed explanation of an algorithm, internal logic, or weights. This ambiguity has led to debates about whether affected individuals receive adequate insight into how decisions are derived. Enforcement action and case examples. So let's at the CNIL enforcement. The French CNIL has fined companies for opaque profiling practices, emphasizing that data subjects must have clear, accessible information regarding automated decisions. Sectoral cases, although landmark case law explicitly articulating a comprehensive right to explanation remains scarce. Enforcement actions, for example, against firms using a non-transparent profiling methods in financial or employment sectors, and align regulatory expectation for transparency and contestability. So the second one, let's just look at the United States, emerging protections and legal debates. So the first point is the lack of explicit right. Under this, we'll look at absence of the comprehensive federal statute. Unlike the GDPR, the US does not have federal law that enshrines a blanket right to an explanation of automated decisions. Instead, a patchwork of sector-specific regulation and consumer protection laws govern algorithm decision-making. Existing framework and enforcement. Equal Credit Opportunity Act, the ECOA. In the context of credit scoring, the ECOA requires lenders to provide reasons for adverse credit decisions, serving as a limited form of explanation. The next one we have the state level initiatives. States like the California under the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, have introduced provisions that echo the GDPR transparency requirements, though these do not fully adequate the right to contest automated decisions. Judicial scrutiny, cases such as the Loomis and Wisconsin, although primarily focused on the use of risk assessment tools in criminal sentencing, have raised concern about the opacity of algorithmic decision-making and highlighted the needs of some form of contestation, though the United States legal framework still grapples with how much explanation is constitutionally on or procedurally required. Also, the second factor is on policy proposal and future directions. Algorithmic Accountability Act. This act is a legislative proposal have been introduced to mandate more rigorous algorithmic transparency and accountability. Although these have not yet matured into law, They indicate growing concern over AI decision-making practices. Research and advocacy, academic and policy research in the US is increasingly focused on developing frameworks that demand clearer and explanations, with organizations uh, like the AI Now Institute advocating for more comprehensive regulatory oversight. Also, the let's look at Canada. Let's developing frameworks for explanation and contestation. Okay. Uh, the first point here is the current legal landscape, PIPEDA and beyond. So, Canada Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, the PIPEDA, provide a foundational for data protection, but stops short of explicitly demanding algorithmic transparency or a right to explanations akin to the EU. However, the emphasis on accountability and data subject rights has led to calls for reform. The second point is emerging proposal and initiatives. Consumer Privacy Protection Act, CCPA, and other reforms. Recent discussion and proposed legislative reforms indicate that Canadian policymakers are considering measurable measures that will require organizations to provide clearer explanation regarding automated decision making, such measures will aim to empower individuals to contest decisions that significantly affect them. Enforcement and case law. While Canada has not yet, while Canada has yet seen prominent case law directly addressing the right to explanation, enforcement actions under PIPEDA regarding opaque data practices are pushing companies towards more transparent processes. Regulatory bodies in Canada are monitoring development in the EU and the US as they calibrate their approaches to algorithmic accountability. So let's compare the analysis and comparative analysis and case laws success of the EU. The EU risk-based framework and vigorous enforcement by national data protection authorities signal a commitment to protecting data subject despite interpretative challenges. The fines imposed on companies for non-compliance demonstrate there are effective mechanisms for contesting automated decision making. Let's see just the challenges in the US and Canada. The United States limitation, the lack of unified explicit right leads to inconsistent application across sectors, leaving significant gaps in protection. Canada evolution. Canada is transitional in its transitional phase, while current legal provisions are less detailed than the GDPR. Ongoing reforms and regulatory guidance are likely to enhance individual abilities to understand and contest automated decisions. Yeah. So we can conclude here by saying that the right to explanation or contestation of automated decision presents a critical tool for ensuring accountability in an increasingly digital world. The GDPR provisions, particularly through Article 22 and associated interpretation of Article 15, represent a rigorous, though imperfect regime that mandates transparency and facilitates contestation. In contrast, the US and Canada are characterized by fragmented or evolving frameworks. US protections emerge through sector-specific laws and judicial interpretation, while Canadian policymakers are in the midst of reforms efforts that signal a shift towards greater algorithmic accountability. The future will likely witness more harmonized approach driven by transnational legal developments and increased enforcement actions aimed to protecting fundamental rights in the digital age. The part A of the other question was discuss how cross-border AI applications challenge national regulatory enforcement in areas such as algorithmic fairness, explainability, and safety. Use examples involving US-based platforms operating in Canada or the EU. Cross-border AI application inherently pose challenges for national regulators because digital services provided by the US-based platforms often span multiple jurisdictions while governed by diverse legal framework. Regulators in the EU, Canada, and elsewhere are grappling with enforcing standards related to algorithmic fairness, explainability, and safety when the underlying system originate or are maintained by entities subject to different domestic priorities. Several factors contribute to these challenges, such as, let's just look at them. First one is divergent legal framework and enforcement action, regulatory inconsistency. In European Union, the GDPR imposes strict rules on transparency and accountability for data processing activities. And the forthcoming EU AI Act will further require risk assessment, testing, and certification for high risks AI system. By contrast, US regulatory policies have historically favored a more laissez-faire approach to innovation. When US-based platforms such as Google, Microsoft, or Meta deploy AI applications globally, they must simultaneously comply with the robust local regulation in EU and Canada, even though their home jurisdiction imposes fewer constraints. Like for example, a content recommending a content recommendation algorithm developed by the US-based platform operating on the server both in the United States and the EU may be subject to European Union obligations to provide explainable outcomes and prevent bias, where the US such transparency is not mandated. This dichotomy forces companies to build multiple layers of compliance measures, complicating enforcement for national regulation. Okay, the second uh, uh, point under this divergent legal framework and the enforceability authorities jurisdiction limitation. National regulators can only enforce local legislation within their borders, even if the EU or Canadian authorities determine that an AI system violates fairness or system rules. The platform's data models and update mechanism may reside on global cloud infrastructure or be controlled by a parent company that contests local enforcement on the basis of extraterritorial. As a result, cross-border disputes and appeals often arise, further delaying consistent enforcement. Number two is algorithmic fairness and challenges. Differing notion of fairness. Algorithmic fairness is a multidimensional concept and, in practice, US-based firms may design systems with the performance metrics that do not fully align with the equity standards and demanded by the EU or Canada. For instance, social media platforms and search engines might optimize for engagement or revenue in the US market, leading to outcomes that inadvertently discriminate against certain user group according to EU anti-discrimination principles. Example, a US-developed content moderation system might exhibit a bias in flagging posts from minority communities when such a system is deployed in the EU, where proactive measures to ensure discrimination or mandatory, national regulators might find it challenging to substantiate claims of algorithmic bias when the underlying data and decision-making processes are appropriately and maintained in the United States. data model and transparency. Achieving fairness requires access to sufficient data, testing, and modification, all of which can be hindered by companies' reluctance to fully disclose the algorithmic processes due to intellectual property concerns. Regulatory Regulators in EU have occasionally sought explainability reports for algorithms that affects users' insights. Yet, US-based platforms may assert that revealing details internal mechanism will compromise competitive advantage. The third one is explainability issues. Um, Opacity and trade secrets. Yeah, explainable AI is a critical requirement in Europe, where system must be able to articulate the rationale behind the decisions and impact users. US companies, however, are often structured around the notion of maintaining algorithmic secrecy to protect data secrets. As a result, when a US platform provides AI-driven services in the EU or Canada, regulators may require to audit trails and transparency reports that are not easy reproducible without internal access. Example is when a US-based search engine ranking algorithm is challenged for lack of transparency. For instance, in cases where algorithms may systematically disadvantage certain political viewpoints, EU regulators might request a detailed documentation. The company may offer only limited technical disclosures, leaving gaps that complicate enforcement actions. Safety and risk management, global service delivery and system updates. Safety standards require AI systems to consistently perform without posing undue risks to users. In the rapidly evolving domain of AI, systems are continuously updated and redefined. US-based platform operating in regions like the EU and Canada face the challenges of synchronizing updates that meet local safety standards. For, let's say, an example, consider a US cloud service that deploy automated decision-making in hiring processes. When the system might initially pass safety and fairness evaluation in US context, periodic updates and unintentional introduce biases or safety risks. The EU regulators then have to coordinate with the company to stop or adjust deployments until the updated versions comply with local safety and mandates outlined in the EU Act. So, real-world incident and recall difficulties. Cross-border safety issues are exacerbated when harmful outcomes occur. For example, if a US-developed platform automated moderation system erroneously removes critical content or fails to flag harmful behavior in Canada, the local impacted users have little direct recourse. The regulatory authority might issue warning or impose fines locally, but the overall system architecture remain controlled by the platform US headquarters, making widespread recalls or correction both logistically and legally challenging. Conclusion: cross-border AI implication challenge cross-border AI implication challenge national regulatory enforcement primarily because of jurisdictional limitation, divergent legal standards, proprietary secrecy, and fluid nature of digital services. US-based platforms operating in EU and Canada illustrate the clash between homegrown business models and the stringent regulatory expected abroad. Harmonizing this difference demands greater international cooperation, consistent enforcement frameworks, and perhaps the development of globally recognized standards that balance innovation with the imperatives of fairness, explainability, and safety. Wow. Yeah. Okay, now that was my presentation on AI governance, the regulation frameworks, and how the countries work on implementing AI and enforcing rules that govern the use of AI. Okay, I'll stop sharing.